Welcome to the next video. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some things that shocked me during my time in China. Now, I'm sharing this list not to insult anyone, not to make anyone feel bad, and in some cases, not even to call, to call attention to something that it needs to stop, but just to share how I felt about something that might have been culturally different. It might have, fallen into any one of many different categories of things that I had never seen before, I'd never experienced before, whether they are part of the culture or not, separate issue. Again, just how I felt about something. One of the things that shocked me when I first got to China was the amount of transactions that involved cash. Now, I know now in 2022, cash is a rare thing. People are using their phones and using WeChat, Apple Pay, Alipay, a variety of different applications and electronic mediums, credit cards, debit cards, that kind of stuff, to pay for things. But when I first got there in 2011, up until maybe about 2013, you went to a restaurant, you paid cash, few and far between, took credit card or your bank card. And I don't mean a foreign bank card, I mean their own Chinese bank card. Because I know I tried a lot. No, I like to pay with card. Oh no, we only take cash. But this is a chain restaurant. But this is McDonald's. And you kind of had to deal with it. A more extreme example of this was right before Spring Festival, and again, this was my first few years. Things changed afterwards. One of the things a lot of people would do is go to the banks or the ATM, take out a metric, ton of cash, because during Spring Festival, those 5 to 10 days holiday, the banks would be closed, or the ATMs would run out of money, so you had to go beforehand to take out as much cash as you felt you needed to carry you through. And that was exacerbated further by the fact that a lot of stores, restaurants, and certain businesses would shut down during that time, in part because they had to pay holiday pay if somebody was working, and they didn't want to incur that cost. Another bigger reason was that most people go home for that holiday, so back to their hometowns. So some places would, be ghost towns because of that. So same thing with some markets. There was a time where a lot of markets and convenience stores would be shut down, so you better have a good supply, good stock of food. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be eating ramen or something very simple, whatever you can get your hands on. So that was a huge shock for me. Similarly, if you were a college student back then, and it was time for you to pay tuition for this semester, this year, whatnot, go to any bank or ATM on the outskirts of a university, try to take out money during that time. They won't have any in the ATMs. Why? Because the students are going there, taking out 10, 20, 30,000 RMB, bricks of cash to pay their tuition, and probably pay books and pay their dorm and pay everything else. So guess what? There's a huge run on the banks. Fortunately, that problem has since been solved, but that was one of the things that shocked me at the time. It's like, I remember first getting there and going, we use debit cards in the US all the time to pay for everything. Why isn't China doing this? Well, it took some time, but now they are, and even the cards are unnecessary. But it was one of the things that shocked me. Another thing is public hygiene, I guess. What I mean by this is seeing people peeing very openly in public, and I'm not talking about just people who are drunk, who can't find a restroom and it's the middle of the night. I kind of understand it. I don't, don't think it's right, but whatever. remember once walking out of one of my apartment buildings, and there was a restaurant on the first floor, and seeing 2 or 3 guys just peeing in the hedges right in front of the building. The streets behind them, the residences and restaurants are in front of them, and I'm thinking, you could have just gone in the restaurant. You couldn't wait until you got home, or you had to just pee right there. Same thing with children wearing. There's something that's very common there, where parents will give children this type of underwear that basically has a butt and pee-pee flap, or just missing that side, because the idea is, well, he's a child, he's going to be pooping all the time, so it's okay if they just poop everywhere and anywhere and pee. That was a shock. I remember even being in a mall, a really nice new mall, Joy City Mall in Nankai, in case anybody wants to know, and seeing parents grabbing their kids, lifting them up, and so that they can angle the pee into the garbage receptacle in a public mall. And it just shocked the hell out of me, especially when I would see that the restroom sign was like not even 5 feet away, and a couple times I just had to say to them in Chinese, "Hey, the restroom is over there." Or walking down the street and hearing people hawk spit. If you don't know what that means, that's when you make that nasty gurgling type sound deep in your throat before you spit. Hawk spit. So that was a common occurrence. You'd be walking down the street. Men, women, old, young, didn't matter. It was just a shock to me. And again, not trying to insult anyone, not trying to make anyone feel bad, but it's dirty. I'm sorry, it's a disease spreading thing. I haven't been there for a bit, so I hope that's improved, especially with the current pandemic situation. But yeah, that was a big shocker for me. Another one was taxi xenophobia. What I mean by this is, barring language difficulties, which I totally get, there were a lot of times where I was trying to hail a taxi. The taxis in China would have this little red light, and the red light would indicate if they're available to take a fare or not. So, light on, available, light off, either have somebody there, they finish for the day, or whatever. So I'd stop at a place, extend my arm to get a taxi, lights on, they'd look at me and just keep driving. And try to do the same thing again, look at me, keep driving. And this happened many times, where they just wouldn't pick me up because they'd see I was a foreigner and just keep going. And I even have it on an Excel. I might include it here in the video, or maybe have it attached, where I did an Excel for, I think it was about 100 or 200 taxi ride attempts. I had the date, I had the place where I was trying to get the taxi, and how many times I listed, how many times the taxi passed me, how many times I tried to get a taxi in that same spot, if I moved, how many times I moved to get maybe a better position or get somewhere else, because maybe there was a traffic jam, so I took that into consideration, or maybe it was going to be a busy road, or maybe the taxis were, it was 4 or 5 o'clock and they're finishing up their day, or that shift, or that portion of their shift, and how many would pass me by, how many times I just decided to walk home or take the subway or something else. So it was a bit an annoyance really when those kind of things would happen, or the taxi would stop, look at me and go, "Where are you going?" "Here." "Oh, it's too far." I'm paying you to take me to a place. Too far doesn't exist. You're getting paid. That's the way I see it. Oh, you want to go to that place? Oh, it's going to be, 50%, 100%, 200% more expensive. What? No. Oh, then forget it. So the price gouging, that was an annoyance. After a while, you kind of figure out what the cost is to go from one place to another, so you know, so you won't get ripped off, and you can. Fortunately, my language skills developed to a certain point where I could just politely and impolitely tell them to pound sand when that happened. And before anybody says, "Oh, it's just because you're a foreigner," no, I remember being in Shanghai with a friend trying to get a taxi in Pudong area, seeing a Chinese couple just down the street try to get a taxi as well. Taxi pulls up. "Where are you going?" Blah blah. "Oh, it's 100. And they're like, "No." Another taxi comes our way, says the same thing to us. So, some xenophobia, some just greed. So, something I never experienced here in the States. The few times I took taxis, it's like, "Where do you want to go?" "Here." "All right, let's go." End of story. Smoking was another thing. When I first got there, I was very surprised at the amount, number, and places where people smoked. You get a real sense for how many people are in China when you kind of take a look around and see how many people were smoking. It was just, oh my God, it's everyone. You go to a restaurant, they're smoking, and there's not necessarily a smoking section. At least there wasn't. 2011, to about 2015, you go to a regular restaurant, people would be smoking. You go to McDonald's, people would be smoking. You go to the restroom anywhere, people are smoking in the stall. Even though there were signs there that say in Chinese and in English, "No smoking," they didn't care. They'd be sitting there. Even the janitor would be doing it too. And I would point to them like, "You can't smoke in here." So, just part of it too was that I had gone through, I remember in the late 90s and early 2000s, the big anti-smoking push here in the US, and I remember when restaurants switched over to smoking and non-smoking sections where it just became no smoking period. And bars, if you served food, you can, depending on the percentage of food that was your ticket sales or your sales in general, you could or could not have smoking. So, to go from that to go to a place where it's Wild West and everyone's smoking everywhere was pretty crazy and annoying too, not good for your lungs, especially when you're living in a country where there's heavy air pollution, that makes you sick and tired, and is eventually just going to give you cancer and all sorts of issues. Now, on top of that, you have people exacerbating the issue, smoking in your face. So, I even remember, I think it was 2015 when they had the smoking reduction campaign in China, and they were saying, "Look, if you're in restaurants, you shouldn't be doing this, and we're going to fine people." And I remember being at one particular, I think it was a Chicago-based chain, what was the name, Blue Frog, in Tianjin, when that was happening. And when that was the rule too, came out of Beijing, and people would smoke in there too, and I would tell them, "Hey, tell the staff, hey, they can't smoke in here." "Oh, make sure. No problem. It's like, dude, you have a rule. Can we follow the rules? Can we follow your rules? So, it's quite a shock and an annoyance. It's something I really hated a lot. Full disclosure, I was a former smoker, but I would only smoke in front of other people if they were comfortable with it, if they allowed it. I didn't force it on anyone. So, before anybody says anything, what other things kind of shocked me there? I guess just property tax or rental tax. When when I first got my first apartment and every subsequent apartment afterwards, one of the things you had to do is you had to find your local police station, because as a renter you had to pay a tax, I guess, for local services. And so what you had to do is bring your housing contract and your ID and go with the landlord the first time to get all the paperwork settled, saying, "Oh, this person's living there, this is the contract, this is how much they're paying." and then this is the size of the apartment, and based on that there was a certain amount you'd have to pay, and it wasn't an exorbitant amount. I'll say that, but it was something you had to do every month, or at the time it was every month. You had to go to the police station, pay it, head out, and they call you or message you, hey, your FAPIA, which is your receipt, is ready. Okay, thank you. Go there and then present it to your employer so you can either get reimbursed for it or have it as a tax write-off. And I had to do this every single month, so you had to basically waste one of your days off doing this, or your pre-work morning. Fortunately, that did change, and you can pay them ahead of time, which, considering that the rates didn't change because it was in part based on your contract and how much you were paying a month, that was really good and really positive change that I like to see. But when I first experienced it, I was kind of in shock. I'm like, why am I paying a tax as a renter? And I know some people say, what's included in your rent? Yeah, here, not over there. So that was another thing that shocked me. Not the evening cards at hotels, to put it mildly, for those that are in the know. For everyone else, what do I mean? One of the things that would happen is, and this is generally in middle to lower end hotels. You travel in China, you stay at a hotel. At a certain point in the middle of the night, or maybe when you get back from an outing, there'll be these cards that'll be someone will slide under your door, and you pick them up. At least on one side, there'll be a picture or pictures of these really attractive girls in bikinis, lingerie, or whatnot. You flip it to the other side, and there'll be a phone number, and this is basically for prostitution. And generally, I don't know about locals, although if memory serves, I think somebody had said that happened to them once. But for expats, if you're there and you're traveling, they're thinking you're a business person, you're lonely, you're into that kind of thing. And so the hotel staff will know who's staying in what room. They'll usually have some kind of agreement with these companies, or with the pimp, or whatever. And they'll say, hey, room 203, and there's a foreigner there, drop a few cards. And they'll do that. So you'll get one or two, or however many, and it'll happen every single day while you're staying there. And I used to actually collect these just to show them to people. Hey, look how many cards I got on my last trip. And I knew other foreigners who would do this too. Oh yeah, check this out. I got this many. Oh, I got this many. Oh, check out this one. So for us, it was a novelty, a hilarious novelty. And I remember even with girlfriends, I'd say, hey, I took a trip, check it out. And they would go, and they were Chinese, and stuff happens. I never used them, never called, never cared to, but it was kind of a shock how open prostitution was there. And before anybody says, well, no, it's not that open, it's a card and you have to go through a process. Well, during one trip with a friend of mine, we stayed out in Wuqing, which I mentioned was in a prior video, was an area outside the city of Tianjin, but part of it. And kind of an industrial area, but it had a nice Venetian style mall and a few other outlet mall and other things to see there. We stayed, and I remember looking at the GPS and going, hey, let's stay in an area a little further out of town because it looks like there's a river and it looks like there's some stuff to do out there, that we had it away from the train station. She's like, sure. So we go out there. Took a taxi at night from the train station to the hotel, kind of got lost. He took us to the wrong branch of the hotel. Fortunately, they were able to direct us, hey, go down this street, turn here, turn there, and it's down this way. We're like, great. So it's probably about 10 o'clock at night when we're walking down the street. And we took this little side street where there's a bunch of 5-6 story, probably walk-up apartment buildings along this very dirty road where there were some tents up. So I guess there was like kind of a food market during the day there. So we're going, and it's dark. There's a few lights are on except for the apartment. So we're walking down the street. At a certain point, we start hearing, hey, hey. And then in Chinese, hey foreigner, hey lao wai, lao wai. Kind of look over and I see first floor of a bunch of these apartment complexes. There's like a little screened in area, like a little balcony porch area. And there's these women just sitting out there in full lingerie under pink lights or, soft lights, in areas that face the street. They're just kind of waving, hey, hey. And I'd never seen that before. Look over at my friend and I say, are they calling us? He's like, yeah, we're like the only people on the street. And I said, are they what I think they are? He says, yes, they are. They're prostitutes. Very openly, exhibiting their goods. And now some people will still counter here and say, well, no, they give massages. There's nothing, underground or illegal about that stuff. Right. They're just in lingerie to help them massage you easier. Anyhow, here's where it gets even more interesting. Keep going down that street, get to our hotel, which was a chain hotel in China. Right across the street, and at the end of where we saw the prostitutes, there's a police station. Are the cops breaking that up? No. Is prostitution illegal? Yes. Does it happen? Yes. And I remember saying to my friend, why aren't these guys busting them? And his response, and he's spot on in what he said. Who do you think's in on it? Who do you think's allowing this? Who do you think's probably the customers? And that wasn't the only time. I remember I was in Tianjin once. A friend of mine who liked to go out and take pictures. It's one of the hobbies I had. We went to this mosque they happened to find inside of this pretty large apartment complex, like in the middle, almost like a court, a mosque in the parking lot courtyard in the center of this place. And went in there, spoke to the people, it was really nice, allowed us to look into the mosque, told us about the history, very open, very cool. As soon as we leave the apartment complex, mind you, it's probably about 2-3 p.m. Turn the corner, go onto a side street, connects to one of the main streets that we were going to get on. Turn the corner, and what do we see? A group of girls all in lingerie outside of one of these apartment complexes, where they have a little balcony area. And they see us and they're like, hey foreigner, hey, and all giggly. And I remember looking at my friend, let me guess. He says, yep, in broad daylight, in a neighborhood, in a regular street. It's just a normal thing. So another thing that kind of shocked me is just the how out in the open it is out there, and how they don't really enforce their own, at least that rule, they don't. Last store I remember being in in Zhengzhou, and I stayed in 2 hotels when I was there because I could only book so many days in the first one. And I remember getting a call in the middle of the night, a story I'd heard from a lot of people, but it was the one and only experience I had, where it's late at night, I get a call. It's a Chinese person on the other end. They say something, I'm like, what? Say it again, what? Say it again, what? When I switched over to Chinese, I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What is it you're looking for? He said, oh, massage. I said, nope. Click, unplug the phone. It's another code word for prostitution. So again, somebody in the hotel knew a foreigner was staying there, thought that I was into that kind of service, gave the room number to somebody, and they were calling. So, wow, this video is a bit long, but other shockers. One of the things I noticed while traveling in China is there are some hotels, and there's a lot of YouTubers who talk about this, and this is still a truism to this day, and it's not necessarily a fault of the hotel, I get it, is in order for you to receive foreign guests, you have to have a special permit or license from the government so that you can house them, because you have to register whenever they're traveling and so on, and we can get into whether this is good or right or whatnot. But for now, I'll just say this is just the system in China. So big hotels, big chain hotels usually be okay. If you stay in a small town, in a small no-name hotel, you're gonna have a problem. Anyway, there are hotels that it won't take foreigners. You know, it doesn't matter that you have the money. It doesn't matter that you're a law-abiding citizen in that country or your own. Sorry, we can't house you. You know, here's your deposit back. Here's your passport. Sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. We can't register you. I almost had an incident like that in Shanghai when my friend booked at one. It was a chain hotel. Where when we got there, there was, I don't remember all the details, but I remember that he was really upset, and his Chinese is impeccably fluent. And you're saying, oh, well, we don't know if we can let you stay here, and he let them have it. He's like, we booked it, nobody said anything. This is a chain hotel, there shouldn't be an issue. And, you know, sure enough, we were allowed to stay, but it seems like some hotels or some staff are unfamiliar even with those rules. So, quite a shocker, you know, to have to think about that as when you're traveling instead of just, you got the money? Yeah. You know, are you breaking any laws? No. Welcome. Yeah, so quite a few things shocked me when I was there. I might do a part 2 to this video because I'm sure I'll think of other things later on, but for now, those are the things I can think of. So, see you guys in the next video.